You've spent 2 hours at cruise, the autopilot is doing its work, the coffee is warm and the scenery is beautiful. But then it happens. You realize you're 40 miles from the airport and you're still at 30,000 feet. You push the nose down, the overspeed alarm starts screaming and you realize you missed your window. Planning a descent is the difference between a professional bottle landing and a chaotic scramble that ends in a go-around. Today I'm going to teach you the 3-to-1 rule and how to program your cockpit for a perfect arrival every time. Welcome to this 4th video of the Microsoft Flight Simulator A to Z series. This week it's time for the letter D, which stands for descent. In aviation we are obsessed with the number 3. A 3-degree angle is the industry standard for a safe, comfortable descent. Geometrically, for every 1 nautical mile you travel forward, a 3-degree slope drops you down about 318 feet. Since we can't do complex math in a vibrating cockpit, we round that to 300 feet per minute. This gives us the 3-to-1 rule. For every 1000 feet you need 3 miles of distance. The MAV, altitude to lose, divided by 1000 times 3. The vertical speed, but how fast you should drop. Take your ground speed and multiply it by 5, or divide by 2 and add a 0. If your ground speed is 400 knots, you need a sink rate of 2000 feet per minute. This keeps you welded to that 3-degree slope regardless of your speed or the wind. But before you calculate your vertical speed, you need your ground speed. This speed is the speed you're actually traveling across the Earth, and it's the only number that matters for your 3-to-1 MAV. In the Cessna G1000, look at the top left corner of your PFD. Right above your airspeed tape, you'll see a small box labeled GS. In the Airbus A320, look at the top left corner of your navigation display, the map screen. You'll see GS written in white text. In the Boeing 737 or 787, similar to the Airbus, your ground speed is located on the navigation display. Look at the top left corner, you will see GS followed by your current speed. Why this matters? If your indicated airspeed is 250 knots, but you have a 50 knot tailwind, your ground speed is 300 knots. If you use 250 knots for your MAV, you'll end up high and fast every time. Use the GS number to stay accurate. Now we looked at everything and discussed the theory, let's look how it works practically. Currently we're flying in the Cessna G1000, right, the Cessna 172 to be clear, and you can see that the active VNV profile is there, and you can see the top of descent is over here because we need to descend to 1900 feet. And currently we're at 2500 feet, right, you can see it, everything is good. So let's first make sure that we're setting the altitude to the, I would say, correct altitude, using the right knobs of course. And you'll also see that, I would say, that purple, let's say, square also changing as we change this. But we're not descending yet. Because what you can do is you can press the cancel VNV, which stands for VNAV, then we'll cancel this one. But if you activate it, then you see the top of descent. And that's where you need to start descending. In this case, it shows us the time, right? The top of descent is, let's say, 46 seconds, 43, and this counting, and we're descending from 2500 feet to 1900 feet, and this will be the, I would say, the descent rate, right? So the descent rate, which we likely, I would say, are maybe we don't even need to go that fast, but it shows us a lot of information. Now the thing which you need to do if you're coming closer to that VNV, you need to press the VNV option, the vertical navigation mode. You can activate it. That will show up on the display here also, right? It shows her V path. And then once we're coming closer to that top of descent, it should activate. Again, it should. Make sure that you're setting your target altitude, which in this case 1900 feet, because else it won't work. And now it says the bottom of descent is within 50 seconds. And you can see that the V-path has now been activated, and you can see that the aircraft now starts descending. The nice thing about this method is that it is using the 3 degrees as already said here. You can change the degrees which you want to descend, but this is the 3 degrees, which is the default one. You can even make it, I would say, steeper or less steep, depending on how far you are from the, I would say, top of descent, right? It really depends on what you prefer. So quick demo of how this works, and you can see that the aircraft now starts descending until that 1900 feet, and that will simply level off. Normally you would say descend further, right? Currently it goes into alt select mode. Normally you will continue the descent until you are with your foot on the ground. So we're in the A320, in this case the Phoenix one, but it should work in the other A320s also. And there are a few things which I want to show you how to plan the perfect descent. So first of all, what you see is here this small arrow, and this is actually the top of descent, right? So the top of descent simply means where you need to start descending. If you're looking at the MCDU, you will also see it over here, right? After the call, you will see an arrow where it says top of descent, because we need to descend from 390 to flight level 292, and then further on, right, every beacon, eventually you would say we're going below 100, etc. And that's, I would say, kind of critical to understand, because if you understand that part, then you can use the friendly autopilot, which is this one, to use the in this case engage manage level change mode. In this case, what will happen is, if you, let's say, are receiving the latest things, then you will see that the top of descent will make sure that you're descending to that altitude. As you can see, right, the new beacon is already there. It's already it's PPG. That's the next one over here. And then if I press normally left and then right click, it should normally work. However, what I observed is that it does not always work. So in that case, you need to manually adjust it and then say engage that managed flight mode. Maybe that's normal. I'm not 100% sure, right? I'm not a professional pilot, but I would say keep that in mind. As soon as you start to do that, you will see that the aircraft will start descending, right? You will start to see it's descending. Don't forget that you still need to ask for permission to descend, right? Because else you're between brackets screwed. So in this case, we need to descend from 390 to 292. So we need to say descend, well, with a fair amount. So let's initially go for 8,000 feet, and then we can see if we can go further down. Because in some cases you can press it directly, but in other cases you need to do it in steps, right? So it's always recommended to do it, say, in steps, so you're kind of between brackets safe to start the descent process. In this case it says 292. And what you will see is that in some cases you will see it levels off at this specific altitude. And that's of course not what you want, right? Because we said, hey, we want to descend to that, say, 292 eventually for the PGP. But you can see also that we're not yet reached that arrow down, right? That arrow down is still here. So we're still good to go. And that's why you also see that we're descending, but pretty slowish. We're now, I would say, leveling off. And I do expect that as soon as we hit this nice, I would say, arrow down, we start descending, because it still thinks that we're not in the phase yet where it's required to descend. Why not? Because the computer has calculated that, I would say, with our current speed and our current altitude, we should start descending here to eventually reach PPG at flight level 292, right? So let me also do that. So we are at 292, right? So we will ask permission for 29 something, because it rounds up in, I would say, full numbers. So of course the HC will start to complain, right? Because we're not descending fast enough. So I should have waited a little bit longer, likely. So let's see what happens. Right, we're not there yet, as you can see. Top of descent hasn't kicked in yet. What you will see is that it's currently set to 29000, and this one has been set to level change. So let's see what happens in a few seconds, hopefully. And else we might need to do some tricks, because in some cases it does not work always the way you want it to work, of course. Another way, what I figured out, is that some people say, hey, just set it to the, I would say, eventual altitude, and then we'll start descending, right? Descending very closely. And also what you see here in this case, you can see that green dot over here, right? You see the green dot, it still is on the top. So we're, I'd say, roughly 30 miles from the top of the descent, right? Which you can see over here. So let's see, because it's descending, as you can see. So 30, that will decrease, and then the sooner we come there, the better it is. So here you can see what just happened, right? It just happened. it just went into that descent mode. You can see it goes pretty fast, as you can, and also likely it does it in steps, right? Because you can see here it now descends to 373, and then it looks like it's kind of stabilizing or something. Let's see what happens over here, right? We're now good, right? So you can see this green dot now comes into the center, which is good because that means we're on the correct glide path. On the right side you can see the descent rate, which is, let's say, pretty high, but we're making our progress, right? We're descending to that 2902, which is the flight level which is being assigned to us, or at least it's in flight plan, because it's not been assigned to us. And that's also something which you need to understand, is that in this case in Flight Simulator, it's likely the ATC won't care about the whole flight levels which you submitted. In some cases they do, but I also observed multiple scenarios where it doesn't happen. If that's the case, then say take action, right? Take action as in, okay, ask permission yourself. So I'm also gonna ask permission to go to 1000 level decrease. And you can see currently it's still set to 292, right, which is good. Although we can also set it, of course, to 292 exactly, and that's something you can do, of course, with moving this one and then setting it to 292, because that's the official one which is registered here, which is the minimum flight level.
Descend and maintain flight level 310. Expect flight level 300.
We can even ask it further, right? We can even say, hey, and decrease even. Right. Now this also kicks in. Always funny, of course. Now the ATC gives us the, I would say, direction where to descend via LB1Z, 6000 feet, ILS Z, runway 24 Romeo, approach via SLO transition. So that's good. So we're gonna say acknowledge.
Descend via ALB 1 Zulu to 6000.
And while we're doing that, right, you can see it's still descending, so we're going good. And this was the demo I want to show you, right? You can see it still continues to descend, and then to the next waypoint right here you can see it's going to PPG, and then we need to descend further, of course, to make sure that eventually we're capturing that glide slope once we're getting closer to the airport. And now it's time for some pro tips. To make it perfect, remember the baro setting. When you cross the transition level, which is 18,000 feet in the US, and in Europe it depends per country, so make sure to check it, you must switch from standard, which is 29.92, to the local altimeter pressure. If you don't, your plane's actual height will be wrong. Also remember the 250 limit below 10,000 feet. Here's my pro tip. The 11,000 feet level off. Don't try to descend and slow down at the same time. It's too hard for the plane. Instead, aim to reach 11,000 feet about 5 miles early. Level off, let the speed bleed from 290 to 250 knots while level. And then continue the descent through 10,000 feet. It's quite professional and keeps you legal. What if the MAV fails? If you're too high, you have an energy surplus. Pull the speed brake lever to increase your descent rate without speeding up. If you're still too high and below 250 knots, drop the landing gear. It's the ultimate air brake. But watch out. If you're dropping the landing gear too early, you might break it. If you're too low, drag and drive. Level off at your current altitude, add power and fly until you intercept your 3-2-1 path again. Once your distance matches your altitude MAV, resume the descent. Descent planning is the difference between flying the plane and letting the plane fly you. Use these formulas, respect the 10,000 feet gate, and you'll never have to panic 40 miles out again. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you back next week for another Microsoft Flight Simulator A to Z.